Welcome to Ultimate Playlist. I'm Matt, that's Briggs, and this is a show where Briggs and I choose the best 10 songs around a theme that we pick in order to create its ultimate playlist, and we each choose our top five. And today's theme is the ultimate indie songs from 2008. Briggs, this is one of my favorite periods of music, which seems odd, but this period from maybe 2007 through 2013, I just found a lot of bands that I really like a lot. Some of my favorite albums are from this time period. Do you also have an affinity for 2008?
I guess I didn't realize how much good stuff did come out in 2008. I guess I wasn't listening to a lot of current music, I guess. But when looking back now, I was like, oh wow, there really was a whole lot of stuff, a lot of really good stuff too around this time.
Whole lot of stuff, yeah. And we'll get into that going forward today too, because I mean, there are plenty of bands that I couldn't. It was a kind of a rich list for me, so there was a lot that I had to sort of
agreed.
Not choose, but yeah, we can talk about some of those later on. I think you went first last week. Is that correct?
Well, why don't you go first this time?
I'll go first this time. So my number 5 song is "Ragged Wood" by Fleet Foxes.
Spring is upon us, follow my only song. Settle down with me by the fire of my yearning. You should come back home, back on your own now. The world is alive now, in and outside.
"Ragged Wood" by Fleet Foxes from their
Nice.
eponymous album, Fleet Foxes.
Right. That album was huge that year. That was all over the place for sure.
It was their
definitely
debut.
remember that.
Kind of like a kind of an interesting thing to get around. I mean, they were super young at this time. They're in their early 20s, and they seemed more of a regional thing. But for some reason, I think just the critical acclaim from this album really broke them up.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what's his name went on to great acclaim too. Wasn't he in the Father John Misty? Wasn't he in that band?
I don't know if he was. Actually, that's a great question.
Okay.
I
thought he was, but maybe I'm wrong.
He's in my periphery. I don't really.
Okay.
I think I've heard a couple songs that I've really liked, and I just haven't dove into Father Misty. John Misty, is that his name?
Father John Misty, right? I think that is his name.
Yeah. But this song's great. There's a few on this album. It's not my favorite Fleet Foxes album. The next one called Helplessness Blues, I think is just a really great record. They really sort of pull it all together. Some of the songs on this one I don't connect with as much, but this song's a great one. It's in 3 parts. All 3 parts are amazing. We were just listening to the first part of it, but yeah, this is a good one. There's a few from this album that are really good, but the next one, Helplessness Blues, a couple years later, I just think is a great one, really great one.
Right on.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about Fleet Foxes, or should we go on to your number 5?
We can go on to my number 5, which was "Where Do You Run To" by Vivian Girls.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a kind of a lo-fi sort of girl group vibe, which I enjoy. That album was pretty good. It was short and sweet, to the point, and 2008.
Yeah, I'm just vaguely aware of that song. I think the interesting thing about this time period is there's just a rich array of material in all different styles and types. It's for some reason, people were allowed to experiment again. And so you have kind of this, you're right, lo-fi, but kind of Baroque sounding
Sure.
music, or you have that straight like the folk stuff from Fleet Foxes that's very reminiscent of late 60s folk and a little bit of Beach Boys, etc. You have a lot of like cool, super tight electronic music with
a lot.
Yeah, like, and it's just like the indie scene for some reason. It's like late 90s cinema where indie movies really took off when you had like Pulp Fiction and just a bunch of stuff in that time period. Kind of the same renaissance in music happened here. And I like...
People were allowed to do a lot of different things.
Yeah, they were. And I imagine part of that has to do with how much easier it was for independent musicians to record themselves, you know,
Absolutely.
at that point.
That's certainly a part of it.
Yeah, I would think. But also maybe as kind of a backlash to the... Like we talked about this on the last one too, where you just sort of after like grunge, you start to have a really kind of glossy, heavier music, almost like the least heavy music ever, whether it's Creed or like Nickelback or something, but just super polished and like Bush or whatever, kind of just not really songs that didn't really have a lot of depth to it. And there's just a lot more experimentation now. So I wonder if there's a little bit of a reaction.
Could be. I would say so. I had a hard time since there was so much going on, both in popular music and indie rock. It's kind of tough to pick certain tracks. I tried to make some rules for myself. You know, I tried to stay on the more indie rock end of things, because there was, like you said, a lot of like electro stuff and punky stuff, like that kind of thing.
So your rule was like just more rock. Is that
I think else? More or less.
Yeah.
More, not really. I mean, it had to come out in 2008, of course.
Yeah, right.
But, yeah.
Yeah, you'll see from my list too. I think it's a little bit more on all sides of the spectrum, and it's just, I think that's just really what appealed to me, is there was so much to offer. There was, and sort of what this was a interesting time for me too. This is when I went to California for 4 years.
Oh,
and
okay.
I think like being in a new place and experiencing new things, I was a lot more open. You know, I sometimes get fixated in the music I like, and then I am not quite as open, but maybe because in that environment, I don't know. I don't know. A new thing, new music, new Matt, I guess.
New scene. You're ready to accept some new music into your life.
I was, but I loved the range. And so, yeah, you'll see my list reflect that. Shall we move on to my number 4?
Yes. Let's do it.
It's Walking on a Dream by Empire of the Sun.
Love's changing all the time. Living in a rhythm where the minute's working overtime. We are always running for the thrill of it. Always pushing up the hill, searching for the thrill of it. All along, we are calling out now together. Never looking down, I'm just in awe of what's in front of me. Is it real now? To be a bold, I can feel Is it real?
It's Walking on a Dream by Empire of the Sun.
Yeah. Nice. Had kind of an electro vibe.
Yeah. Are you familiar with them? They were a bit under the radar
I
too.
actually am not. Yeah, no, I missed out on that one completely.
Oh, dude, I would highly recommend checking the first like 5 songs on this album they're just awesome. It's really hard to describe them too. Like if you look at, I love these crazy bastards. If you look at them, their stage show is crazy. It's the two of them, and they're dressed in this like, I don't know. It's like this like crazy sort of Sgt. Pepper's kind of kabuki, kind of Aztec-y prince thing, and they'll wear these big pyramids on their head and giant sunglasses, and their vibe is ridiculous.
That's great.
But I love the music because it's very it's like you definitely have some of the synth stuff, and you have the electronic drums, of course, but a lot of it is like guitar driven, almost like Phoenix in that way, where you'll just get like this like strummy guitar thing, and they're amazing vocals. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's just kind of a this interesting like super tight mix of the amalgamation of electronic and regular instrumentation.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
But I think but they they were never big. This album, I think it's eponymous. No, it's not. It's actually, the album's called Walking on a Dream as well, just like the song. It only hit something like 97 on the Billboard 200, so it didn't really get that high. But Yeah, I mean, they ended up in some commercials and things. I think that's how I experienced them first. I was like, oh, what's this cool thing?
That makes sense. This was around that time where that started happening more too.
Totally.
Where indie artists would be in mainstream commercials, and that's how you would hear about the song.
Exactly. Or like the OC or something or I don't know.
Sure.
These TV...
some show. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right.
They started licensing new music a lot more and kind of hip stuff too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that happened to a few of the bands on my list too. I was noticing, but yeah, this band, their choruses are so cool. Like for some reason, they always do something very interesting harmonically in the choruses that sort of remind you of something. Like this one sort of reminds me. I don't like the song Caribbean Queen because it's a ripoff. But that's a story for a different day. But
fair enough.
But the chorus is kind of similar to that. If you listen to it, it's like, oh no more love and on the run. It's a little bit like that. So it has this nice little 80s like retro vibe that you're kind of familiar with.
Right.
But they always do something a little strange harmonically, like do a major instead of a minor. So I don't know. I'm just super intrigued by them. And I highly recommend
definitely going to check them out. Cool. I had not heard of them before. Thank you.
You're very, listen.
For the education.
This is what I'm here for. I'm here to introduce you to some things, and you're here to introduce me to some things.
Right on.
All right. Should we go to your number 4?
You'll definitely be familiar with this artist, maybe not this song, but my number 4 is The Seus by Black Francis.
I am double dosed, you are ghost, you are toast, you are bandito. The thief who calls himself the great hammerhead, that which I am the great, Seus. That which is yours is now mine, it's now mine, Seus. I'm going to city to see my daddy. I hope he's glad when he is with me. I was an itty baby.
How crazy is that?
Yeah, it's a weird song. But, Black Francis, of course, is Frank Black from Pixies.
That's right.
And I remember when this album came out, it's like an EP. It's short and sweet. And I think this is the first track on it. And I was like, oh, that's a weird and cool song.
That is
I enjoy it.
Just a nuts song.
Yep.
Yeah, just like, harmonically just crazy.
It is weird.
And like all the vocals, I mean, it's very Beck too,
Yeah, sure.
That's what it reminds me, like the old. I can't remember which album it was, but the I'm a Loser, whatever that album was, it wasn't
Mellow Gold.
Mellow Gold, right? Like kind of that, where it's sort of choppy and kind of broken up.
Yeah,
with different elements in it. Yeah,
yeah. I think he was doing a thing where all that was just tracked live, in the studio, one take. I think. I mean, maybe that had some overdubs that sounded like it, but I think the basic tracks, at least, around that time, I know he was doing a lot of that with the Frank Black stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Are you a Pixies fan too? Is that
absolutely?
Yeah. What do you have a favorite?
Song by them? I don't know. I can't pick one. Yeah. Where's My Mind is great. That's a pretty famous one.
Great
that was
song.
The one that was in Fight Club.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great one. That's what I think of when I think of the Pixies, of course.
Yeah.
Cool.
Their most iconic song.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's a great
Black
one.
Francis puts out some weird stuff sometimes.
I guess so. I'm gonna have to check out the rest of the EP.
This is a cool album. It's a low commitment. It's pretty cool.
Nice. Shall we move on to my number 3?
Let's do it.
Well, Skinny Love by the great Bon Iver.
Oh yeah. Good one. That was another big hit album that year too, right? What was that album called?
That is For Emma Forever Ago.
That's it. Yeah. That made a lot of waves too, and no one knew how to pronounce that guy's name at the time.
No, they didn't, because
Iver.
They didn't take French in high school like I did.
Right, sure. Yeah, that's a good song. There's a lot of kind of more folky influenced indie stuff around that time too. That was pretty popular.
That's
Even the Fleet Foxes, has kind of the folky vibe, and then so
Yeah.
Bon Iver, of course.
That's the thing. Every single one of these songs is like a different vibe, like different
Right.
style, different influences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this one's totally folky, but it's not. It's like not the same as the other one. It's not as baroque,
Right.
as or like Mamas and Papas as Fleet Foxes is.
Right. Bon
But-
Iver's a little more singer-songwriter vibe, but in
Yeah.
the woods or something.
That's exactly right. So, I mean, do you know the story of this album and what he did?
I don't recall.
Yeah, so he had mono in like 2007, and just was like was like sick for a while, and like hated his life, hated his job. He was living in South Carolina, and he went up to Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where his dad had a cabin, and he holed himself up in that cabin for I think a year and recorded this album. He just kind of surrounded himself with some acoustic guitars and some other things. And it's basically he's the entire album. Everything is him. So
Interesting. Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. This is different. Like, so this is one of my Forever Forever. This is one of my, I would say, a top 25 album for me. The whole thing front to back is a beautiful, beautiful album.
Yeah.
But his next one, just eponymously titled Bon Iver, you see like the breadth of this guy's imagination and skill as a writer. It is completely orchestrated. So whereas this one's like really rough, this is one of the roughest albums recording that I would ever love. Like sometimes this one, a lot of times that would annoy me. This does not annoy me at all. It's totally fine that it's rough.
Yeah, it's pretty charming the way it sounds. Yeah.
But the next album is pristine. It's like recorded pristine and super orchestrated and beautiful. So anyway, so you can really just see how like amazing he is as an artist in the follow up. But I have very warm but vivid memories of discovering this album. I know it was on Pandora. I think it was this song, and I was like, oh, that's a really cool song. It just kept coming up for me. So I got the album, and I was like, oh, so I went to go to like this in Oakland. There was this huge flea market, which was just like, it's just crazy. Actually, we have one in Florida, not too far from me as well. But it's just like, it's seemingly miles of like crazy shops, and then it's just inundated with people. So I'm like, I'm just going to throw Bon Iver on and walk through this crazy experience.
Cool.
And it was amazing. Like I loved, just having this vibe here with all the chaos of the people around.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, so this did pretty well, like one of the better albums on the ones on the list. So hit 65 on Billboard, but did sell 1.5 million albums. So that's like, that's better than a lot of these.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, Bon Iver, one of my favorites, especially these two albums. Shall we move on to your number three?
My number 3 is Gallery Piece by Of Montreal.
I wanna be your love, I wanna make you cry and sweep you off your feet. I wanna hurt your pride, I wanna slap your face, I wanna paint your nails, I wanna make you scream, I wanna braid your hair, I wanna kiss your friends, I wanna make you laugh, I wanna dress.
Nice.
Yeah. This album was pretty interesting. This was kind of this one's a little more synth poppy than some of their earlier albums, but it's basically, I think it's just like one dude who does this. Do you listen to this band at all?
No,
You
not
know
at all.
Oh, really?
No,
Oh,
this is
okay. They
new.
have a ton of albums. Oh, really? Cool. Check them out. You'll probably like them. It's cool. It's a little all over the place. This album, I don't know if it's really a concept album, but he has some characters on the album that he does, and it's interesting. But they're always fun, cool vocal harmonies, and interesting writing. Like that song after that part has a pretty significant feel change, and then gets back into the groove and whatnot. But that I enjoyed that album when it came out also, so I had to throw that one on there.
Totally. Yeah. It feels like more disco too. So again,
Yeah,
it's like
that song especially. Yeah,
like again, we're in a different genre, like a completely different genre.
agreed.
Which is super amazing for this time. Yeah, that's a cool song. Like like the guitar comp that's going on in there, and just like the very steady beat to it.
Yeah. Some of the other songs on that album I probably like a little better, but they're pretty wild, and it was hard to pick a cut to listen to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got it. So is that what he does? Like, do each of the songs, are they all like different parts? Is that how it's constructed mostly? Not
really. I mean, this one's more, I think, like an album that you listen to rather than a collection of singles. But that's all still songs, and it all sounds like that band, but that one is more disco-y. There's some slower songs as well, and then just some kind of weird, cool arrangements with some crazy vocal layering, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it does a lot of that.
Yeah.
Great live band if you ever get a chance to see them too. They're pretty good.
Oh, nice. Do they travel to New England? Is that?
That's where I saw them, in New Hampshire, actually. But they have like all these like day glow costumes and like choreographed dance stuff. I don't know. It was pretty interesting. It was cool. It was fun.
How big is the band on stage?
They had a few extra people. It was like 5-6 people, I think, something like that. Maybe they had a couple singers too. It was a decent sized production. I don't remember exactly how many.
Oh, right on. Cool. Shall we move on to my number 2?
Yeah.
Well, it's 2 Weeks by Grizzly Bear. Two Weeks, Grizzly Bear.
Nice.
Again, this is probably a top 10 album from me. This is Vivian. I don't know if you're familiar with the entire album, but it is a sick album, just like amazingly constructed.
I definitely heard the band. I don't know if I've heard that whole album, but I'll definitely give it a listen.
Highly, highly recommend it. They had some commercial success. Another one of the bands that was just like in a bunch of different movies and things. I can't remember what it. Oh, Philip Seymour Hoffman wrote and directed a movie. The name escapes me, but the entire soundtrack I think was this album.
Oh, interesting.
So they had some of that going on, and then I think maybe I experienced this song first in like a car commercial. I think that's what it was. And then they were on like Letterman in 2008, and that kind of broke them a little bit, but they never quite, besides that, they were always super critically acclaimed, but they never really broke out too much. I think maybe this album sold a couple 100,000 or something, but it is just a fantastic album. Highly, highly recommend. Cool. I think that's pretty much it with it. I would just say that what makes it so good is just, again, you have some of the Baroque, you'll listen to some of the songs and there's like a lot of harmony. So it's again, kind of that Baroque mix. But they sort of plaster together several styles at once. And they're the kind of band that when they write a song, you can tell that they're trying to do the best thing for that song and not like any individual ego. Like if you listen to the drums on 2 Weeks, this song, it's not a straight up groove. He's hitting in different spots. It's like he's accenting areas. He's not keeping a beat. And most drummers would be like, my job.
Play it straight. Yeah, sure.
I got to play it straight all the way through here. And no, it's like, let's serve the song. So,
cool.
Grizzly Bear, Vivian, highly recommend that album.
Awesome.
So shall we move to your number 2?
My number 2 is Nothing Ever Happened by Deerhunter.
Definitely on my list.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That was a big song too. That one made all the end of year best lists, and it's a cool band. That's an interesting song where there's like a 3-minute like guitar solo jam out at the end, which is kind of rare for this type of music, but it suits it, you know.
It certainly does. Song. Yeah, I love the tight drums too. Like that was something that really like you heard from this time period, even though that's not, I don't think that's an electronic drum kit. That sounds like a real kit to me. But the way that they mix it and how tight it is like it has it just has that vibe of an electronic kit, which I just love. It just makes it just gives it like a sound of this time period. But yeah, that's a great one.
A lot of like one of the tricks that they would, I don't know if they did on that song, is they would either not play cymbals while they're doing the beat, or they would just overdub the cymbals later, that kind of thing. And you can kind of get a real tight kit sound.
Yeah, because you're not getting bleed.
I don't know what they did. Yeah, exactly. I don't know what these guys did, but they're pretty on the kind of the lo-fi end of things too.
Yeah. This
one is more songy than crusty, I think, from some of their earlier stuff.
That's certainly true. Yeah, I think you're right with that. It's and there's a lot of like, I think there's a lot more sparse hardware in this time period too. It's just not, things are just not as washy. Even like with Empire of the Sun, some of the more electronic bands too, it's like they really focused on driving the beat with the kick and the snare and just not a lot of stuff in between. And then they would just use jangly guitar as like almost in replacing that hardware.
Sure, that makes sense. And that it does give it a more of a drum machine vibe, you know, because the kick and the snare is usually pretty prominent on the drum machine.
Yeah,
the
for
cymbals aren't as important or cool sounding usually.
No, they're not. Yeah, but it's funny because like even in writing, when I write too, I ask sometimes I'm like, do I need the like, do I need to put them in here? I don't know that I need to. I got a lot of other stuff going on. They're just going to get in the way.
There's only so much space in the song, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that tune.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Shall we move on to my number one?
Let's do it.
In our ultimate list of best indie songs from 2008, my favorite is Long Division by Death Cab for Cutie.
Ooh.
They carried on like long division, as it was clear with every page, oh, that they were further away from the solution that would play without a remainder, without a
Love that song.
Nice one. Yeah, that's a good one. I never listened to too much of them. I heard like the hits, you know, some of the bigger songs, but I kind of missed out on that band also.
Yeah. So their album before this, Plans, I listened to that a lot. I think that was maybe 2005. It was a few years earlier. And that one has like, Where Soul Meets Body. You would have heard that. Do 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 do, almost like Super Mario-ish and kind of in the vibe. But that's that I really like that album. This album was a disappointment. I was really looking forward to it because I really liked Plans. Just some sick writing on it, and his lyrics. So this is Ben Gibbard is the kind of the main guy. His lyrics are some of the best lyrics written. Like the lyrics for the song are amazing. He's talking about long division. The remainder is what's left over. So he's like talking about his relationship and how it's splitting apart and how he's afraid of being the remainder. It's like crazy. But that album's great. This album was a little bit of a disappointment, but this is probably overall my favorite Death Cab for Cutie song because it's just a sick. I love the groove. It's just this driving do 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 do, almost like what is it? It reminds me of like Deep Purple, almost like with this do, and then you'd hear the organ come in, but instead of organ, it's this driving guitar,
like Highway Star or something like that.
Yeah, it has that like feel to it where you're like, okay, we're moving, like we're
propulsive sort of feel. A lot of these songs do have that kind of like Neu beat or that 70s German, kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just love it. Like I think it's just a phenomenal song. So they were very much an indie darling for a while too. Even their earlier stuff another one of the bands who's just like all over, like teenage centered movies and TV
Right.
shows. And then into like commercials and things, but never like they did. I think they've only sold total like 2.5 million. I would have expected it to be a
Really?
lot
I thought it'd be
bigger
a
than
lot
that.
more because I feel like they're a famous band.
I know. I kind of feel the same. I felt a lot of same way about several of these bands too. And
Yeah.
I'm like even Bon Iver, I think he's only sold a couple million albums. And I'm like, really? Like I've
I
seen.
mean, this was back when, I guess this was kind of when people stopped buying albums, was around this time, right?
Yeah, but they
In
do
the
count.
2010s.
They do count the spins though. They'll
yeah.
like a certain amount of spins equals a sale, like an album sale.
I
so,
see.
But actually, you do make a good point though, because those streaming services weren't as big then. So I don't know how
No,
well
this
they
is
did count.
another transitional time from physical recordings to streaming.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So maybe there's some, I don't know, missed count there, but I still
Right.
would have, if someone told me, Death Cab for Cutie has sold 15 million albums, I would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
I would have believed that too, but I guess that's unrealistic
I guess. Yeah.
by
But
modern standards anyways.
yeah. So, but I would say Death Cab for Cutie, never like my favorite band. And a lot of their other albums are not, I don't like, don't really speak to me, but as I mentioned, Plans and then this song, not the, the album that this was on is called Narrow Stairs. And this wasn't the, Long Division wasn't the single. I think they had a big miss by not making this their single. Instead, they did this song called I Will Possess Your Heart, which has this like 2-minute intro
Right.
of it's
That's a long song. I'm looking at it on Spotify
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
like
It's an
this
8-minute song with 37
yeah, and
million
you're kind of like,
plays.
can we just get to? I mean, if it's the single, I would be like, can we just like get to the like what's the meat of what we're doing here?
Right. That's
They like
weird.
comp for a couple
that-
minutes.
yeah.
It's like very strange. And yeah, so I think they kind of messed that up. Like that was a bad call. They should have released this because this song is not only like amazingly written and super emotional and easy to connect with, but like anybody would like this. Any person who likes pop music would love this song.
Yeah.
Where that one is like out of the box and weird. I don't know what they were doing.
Yeah. Off-putting for mass appeal.
Yeah, but I just love it. I love it's a very punctuated chorus, remain, like with the guitar comp following the vocals, just this sick thing. So anyway, one of my favorite of this year. Yeah. Shall we move on to your number one?
Sure.
Ooh.
My number one is Sequestered in Memphis by The Hold Steady.
Man, I wanna know exactly which bathroom, dude. Doesn't make any difference. It can't be important. Yeah, shut up, tell my story again. In Barlight, she looked alright. In daylight, she looked desperate. That's alright, I was desperate too. I'm getting pretty sick of this interview. Subpoena in Texas, sequestered in Memphis. Subpoena in Texas, sequestered in Memphis.
Cool song.
Yeah, I like this song. It's kind of an earworm, It stuck with me a bit. Really good chorus, but they're kind of like a stalwart indie rock band that's been around for a while and kept putting out stuff. And this one came out in 2008. It's a pretty good song. This one made some lists too of year end, best tunes and that kind of thing. I don't think these guys sell many albums, but good songwriters, kind of hardworking musicians, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Kind of Weezer-ish, like I think in certain aspects. I mean, maybe not so
interesting.
later Weezer. I think maybe some of the older stuff, just like the more
Yeah, I guess they both have classic rock sensibilities.
yeah, that's kind of how I feel
This to
about
me
it.
sounds like this could have been a big radio hit in a number of periods. Maybe not in 2008, but
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a look back. Like this sounds more right. Maybe could totally be 70s, no problem.
yeah,
Very easily. Yeah, and I think like that's it's sort of the defining thing with this time period is that it's like you were allowed to have you were allowed to have different influences than just like one thing. And so especially on what's going on in the indie side of things, you just have like a wealth of different styles going on, including this one. Like all different. I think all of none of these songs were the same. Like they were all like very different.
yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting after like coming off of the grunge thing last week.
Right.
I mean, those were different too, but still within.
But they all
like,
had a similar vibe, you know.
similar vibe. Right.
Like this is not that. All these bands sound pretty different, but it was still kind of classified as indie. Indie is a weird term, anyways.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard to. Where's the cutoff? You know, when does indie become punk, or when does indie become synth pop or whatever? There's a lot of crossover bands that get classified as indie.
That's
anything
true.
that ends up on Pitchfork or something like that.
right. Sub pop. Then you know what
Yeah,
you got
sure.
something.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just sort of like, I guess the way that I approached it, well, I knew a lot of these anyway. And I, so I was excited to do this particular year. Actually, I could have done 8, 9, 10, 11. There's like a bunch of albums
There's
in between
so
that we should
many.
talk about.
Yeah.
So we could have picked any of those and that would have worked. But but I think, but part of the criteria is it couldn't be like, none of these are going to be top 10 songs.
Right.
They'll usually hit either the indie charts or like some of the rock charts or the dance charts. But
Yep.
they'll mostly stay off the Hot 100 or like the top 40. You won't know. We won't see
Sure.
most of these, or they're super low on the Hot 100.
I didn't even consult that for these for my picks because I figured they wouldn't have made a dent anyways.
Yeah, mostly.
I looked at a lot of like indie rock websites and year end best of lists just to remember what came out this year.
Yeah, I consulted just because it's interesting to me, like to know what because again, I'm in my own musical bubble, just like I was during the grunge period, where that's what I saw and that's what I knew, and so I was like, what the hell else is going on at this time? What was popular?
Right.
And so like looking at that is kind of interesting to me, but
there was a lot of big mega hits around that time too. I think like Katy Perry came out, and like Beyonce had like Single Ladies, like stuff like that was.
That's
out.
right. Yeah.
And even Metallica put an album out in 2008.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, the Death Magnetic or whatever it was
Oh
called.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I actually really like if it's Katy Perry. I wonder if that's the it's the California Girls record.
I think it was like the I Kissed a Girl one, whatever that was.
Oh, okay, interesting. I like her album after the second album, the album after that with like California Girls and Fireworks and stuff I love that. That second album is like maybe it sounds strange, but that album is phenomenal and I love it. Yeah.
She writes a lot of hits, that's for sure.
She does indeed. Yeah. So it's interesting. Like I wonder, so you gravitated more towards like the indie rock side of things for sure.
Yeah.
Listening to your list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which was on purpose.
Yeah.
I need to narrow it down somehow,
What did you have songs that you considered but you didn't put on your list?
Oh yeah, there was a bunch of bands. I mean, there were let's see. Yeah, I had Bon Iver on my short list. The New Pornographers, Destroyer, Mountain Goats, let's see. Marnie Stern, Foals, Hot Chip, Be Your Own Pet, Fuck Buttons, No Age. There's so many of them. There's a lot of good albums. And then there was some stuff that was like quintessential like indie rock, but it's just not my thing. Like Vampire Weekend's album came out that year and that was huge.
Yep.
And Fleet Foxes and stuff like that. I saw too. They're not my favorite band, so I don't want to include them on my list, but
a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
There was another cool one. I was gonna say there's another cool one too. Girl Talk. Are you familiar with Play Your Part? One.
Mm-hmm.
That has maybe the best opening of any song I've ever heard in my entire life, which is just this mashup of "Give Me Some Love" and I can't remember the rap tune offhand, but it's just amazing mashup right in the beginning of that song. That was a cool one. Part one I think is maybe 4 or 5 minutes long, but the whole thing I think is like an entire album. It might be like a whole 45-minute.
It's like a DJ
mashup.
set, basically, right?
It really is. Yeah. But that's an interesting one. You mentioned Vampire Weekend. I really do like Vampire Weekend a lot. This is their first album was 2008.
Yeah.
And there's one of the songs on there, M79. I very much considered, but the album after this, actually there are 2 albums after this. I like a lot more, and they're like a lot more. They become like a lot more Paul Simon later on.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Which I love. So anyway, they definitely were a consideration for me. But if it were a few years later, something from them would have been on the list. Also, the National is a really great indie band too, and they released an album this year. I think it's their album after this I like more, but there's a song called Fake Empire, which is great. That I considered as well. Who else? The Raconteurs. That's
Jack White. Right?
Jack White's
and others.
Yeah, I can't remember who else is in it, but
I can't either.
But they had some like cool. He had at least one cool song. The name escapes me, but he had a cool song come out this year too, and an album come out this year.
Huh. I figured that I feel like that's more of like a straightforward rock band.
Yeah, but they
like
would never
indie.
would. Well, no, not the Raconteur stuff. You think so?
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like, I don't know.
It's a little. I see what you mean because he does have that vibe. He has that. I don't know what Jack White. I don't know how to describe Jack White. It's like it's It's definitely like it's. I guess classic Rocky, but it reminds me more. It's kind of the Black Keys kind of have a similar style too, where it's like kind of almost like it's not Southern rock like Allman Brothers, but it feels like a
no. It's
deep
like old
South.
blues.
Old blues.
Yeah,
and deep
like
South.
old blues influence. I think those guys listen to a lot of the same records.
Sounds like it. Yeah, even in the recording style of Jack White, he's got he has that very telephone sounding vocal recording,
sure.
etc. And
I like that.
and like that, some echo and that type of stuff.
And
But
some fuzzed out guitars and that kind of thing.
buzzed out guitars. Anyway, but there tons of interesting and a wide variety of music from this time. But I also just wanted to talk about some of the things like this led to and some of the other bands that I found from this time period.
Sure.
So like this leads to right after this is like Phoenix. Phoenix has already done an album, but they do Wolfgang Amadeus Phoenix, which is a phenomenal album. If you like any electronic or dancey music, that album is great. One of my favorites. As I mentioned, The National leads into another a British band that I super love. One of my favorites is Everything Everything. I've probably mentioned them to you before. But their first album, I think, happens in 2010 or 2011. Another eclectic, amazing band who writes, variety of stuff. I saw them in Boston with a buddy of ours. Just a phenomenal band.
Cool.
Vampire Weekend, I mentioned. Bon Iver, Grizzly Bear, which we mentioned. Elbow comes from this time too, which is another British band I love. James Blake, just like a ton of music and musicians that I still listen to today and follow today.
There was just a lot of music. I had a hard time kind of paring it down here on this one.
Yeah, I agree. I had to spend some time with it, but no, I think that's pretty much. I think that's pretty much all I have for this time period. But highly recommend if people aren't as familiar with the indie sounds of 2008. Highly recommend listening to anything on this list, all of their albums, and even if you put it in Spotify will give you some suggestions of other things like it, and you'll hear a wealth of music. So, absolutely, that's pretty much all I have. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we covered it.
So this has been Ultimate Playlist. We'll see you next time.